Welcome to Partner Bridging the Digital Divide first interactive discussion. Our topic today, collecting qualitative and quantitative feedback from clients. We're happy to host Lauren Smith from University of California, Santa Barbara, Mariana Milton from AZ Strut, and Dave Sevick from Computer Reach. Today's session will be moderated by Catherine Lotto, Vice President of Communications for PBDD.
Then we'll get to see our pictures. Welcome to this hopefully interactive section sponsored by Partners Bridging the Digital Divide. Thank you very much to our speakers, Dave from Computer Reach, and Lauren from UC Santa Barbara, and Mariana from AZ Strut. I'm Catherine Lotto, VP Communications of Partners Bridging the Digital Divide. And we're going to ask a series of questions, and feel free to chime in if you have experience or you want one of the speakers to go deeper into the feedback or into the answer. I was jumping ahead. The first question is, how do you collect feedback and how is privacy protected? And I was going to start with Dave.
Okay.
Sure, he's done chewing his lunch.
It's a lunch and learn.
Yep.
We use two tools to collect data. By phone when we do an intake. We use Salesforce for all of our equipment. And we use that's for donations and shipments of materials. And then we use HubSpot for all of our scheduling and all of our service visits in the Digital Navigator program. So HubSpot and Salesforce are our two CRMs that we use. And how do we keep it private? They're both secure networks. They're both secure systems. So we can keep all that in a silo. And then we frequently just export things to Excel to do bigger reports.
Mariana or Lauren? I'm not sure whether you guys are going to answer individually together or...
How about I start and then it will segue to Lauren. Okay. So, well, good question. For AZ Strut, we have been trying to collect a lot more feedback, and we basically have been doing paper surveys with our education program, so with our Techie Labs and our Techie camps. And then we tally those and hopefully can, make some reports on those. However, last year, Lauren offered to help us do a more intensive survey, and she brought all her time and talent to us. We're very appreciative, and she can tell a little bit more about how we collected feedback through her project.
Yeah, I wish I had as coherent as an answer as Dave did. We ended up doing the survey largely based on Google Forms. So rather than tracking people's responses through emails, it was anonymous. And then I took an extra step of, rather than keeping things in Google, exporting it into Excel and whatever further identifying markers I could eliminate, I did. So names, emails. That being said, the privacy concern was something that I had throughout the project, and I would love to hear how you deal with these things, so everybody else does. Yeah, because there were some definitely identifying information that gets through the cracks on these things, so yeah.
Anybody else want to chime in? Tempted to put Michelle on the spot, but
I guess a follow-up in terms of for Dave, how you collect feedback. So I think you interact with people, and then you also have follow-up surveys and things like that go on for a longer period of time. And I understand the tools that you use to keep that in, but as far as the mechanics for contacting people.
It starts with a partner organization, like the local government or school districts or any nonprofit partner that refers people to us that are underserved. they refer us. They usually give us a list of people, and then we contact those people using an intake form that we built in HubSpot, and all that data is collected there, securely collected. And sometimes there's just an ID number that we use when we're making everything anonymous. So we do that. In Salesforce, it's more keeping track of the equipment that we distribute. We're a refurbisher as much as a digital literacy company. So we need to keep track of who owns the equipment. So, and both HubSpot and Salesforce talk to each other. So we're able to do a bi-directional syncing of data. So that's sort of the mechanics. And then we actually, since we do home visits in our digital navigator program, we have the first data point, which is an hour visit. We call it the first session. And then we have follow-up sessions based on the need of the client. Sometimes they're fine after one visit, but frequently they want more visits. And we like when they invite us back because we can get more data as opposed to just a phone call. So we try to encourage, yeah, we'd be glad to come to your house, no cost. And we hope that they say yes, because we can collect more data. So that's the mechanics of everything. They get up to 4 visits. Our grants are usually written with an initial visit and then 4 smaller visits.
I have a strong feeling Barry steered Dave into answering the second question, which is, what's been your most successful technique for gathering qualitative feedback testimonials? And I suspect it's the home visits, particularly when they invite you back. You probably get some good stories from people.
It is. It is. And those are critical for getting funding. You know, there's some funders that want a lot of data, a lot of numbers and percentages, but the thing that usually secures another round of funding is the testimonies from people. How much did you really change their life, improve their life? So so the testimonies are a big part of everything we do. And you're right, when you're in person, people tend to tell you more. We ask them if you don't mind if we record it, so we get it right. Some people don't want to be recorded, but most people are, oh, that's fine. So we set up our iPhone to record the interaction and just have a conversation with them. And then we pull out bits and pieces, and then we make sure they approve of what we wrote, and then we'll publish it.
Have you done any analysis on what gets you invited back?
For funding or back to their home?
Back to your home. What makes people invite you back? Because some people say yes to come, or they want to have you multiple times. I'm just curious whether there's some, if you've done any analysis as to what's the most successful way to get people to say, yes, please come back, or could you come back? And then they talk more. Maybe it's just talkative people, but.
It's just, we actually are very intentional about being kind and slow and deliberate in what we do. Okay. So they ask us back because we're nice. And I frequently, when we train people to be digital navigators, we talk about the difference between Mr. Rogers and Sheldon Cooper in The Big Bang Theory. And we let them know that we train people to be Mr. Rogers. And the people that are Sheldon Coopers are usually not real effective. They usually make people feel, especially older people, they make them feel a little bit humiliated and embarrassed. So we're super intentional about going slow. We're not afraid to repeat things 10 times if they need it. And we let them know that up front. We don't expect you to know this stuff, and we'll be glad. We'll stay here as long as possible. We're not in a rush. We don't stack our appointments up. So we just let them know we're here as long as you want us to stay. And older people usually have a tolerance of about 2 hours max. I don't think anybody's ever kept us more than 2 hours. And most people are pretty tired after about half hour to an hour. So patience, kindness, good listening skills, that our feedback from people is that's why they want us to come back. They never say we want you back because you're so smart. That's like 0.
Mariana?
So, in terms of our most successful technique for qualitative feedback, that would be Lauren's project with us, really. We have been successful one-on-one when we run into individual people or contact organizations that we've been in relationship with for a while. Then we're very successful, but it hasn't been built into our system as much as Computer Reach has it built into their system. Also because we're not that focused on the individual digital literacy model yet. We're starting to build that into our service model. We've been more nonprofit and school partnership based. So, for example, when an organization comes and picks up equipment, it's probably not the right time to ask, how's the equipment doing? Because nobody has used it yet. So we're trying to build that in. So maybe Lauren, you can talk about what you felt was the most successful part of your project.
Sure. And I mean, a lot of this is going to echo what Dave was saying. Just being thoughtful, attentive to time, even for the organizations that we spoke with. So like the survey feedback had qualitative options for it, but the qualitative interviews afterwards were very much, here's the list of questions. We're going to go within this block of time, being respectful of what that time is going to look like. And, letting people talk, I think, and just having attentiveness to what they're saying and following up on that. And yeah, also like the following up aspect of it. We don't have any, response to the survey. Why did you respond to our survey? I think that would be useful in the future, but having the space for people to talk about what's working and then what's not, and kind of building off the connections that Strut has made over the years, I think has also been really important. Pretty much because I mean, I came into this relatively recently. Strut's a much older organization. And everyone that I spoke with talked about like the longevity of their relationships or the ways in which they came to Strut and kept coming back to Strut because of that relationship that they felt that they built. So yeah, I think time, like attentiveness to the needs of whoever you're talking to, but also that like commitment to the relationship as well, kind of like what Dave was saying.
We also let them know that we're there for them for the whole year. This is not just a drop off. This grant covers you for an entire year. And call us. Phone support's always free. If they want to make an appointment, they get up to 4 appointments with us to come to their home.
Yeah, I think that. Oh, sorry, Dave.
Yeah, that's good. No.
But yeah, I think that came out as well throughout the interviews that I was doing. A lot of the response was, "Oh, we keep coming back every time we need this new thing." How that thing has changed over the years, like going from phone calls to computer inputs, but that relationship that keeps coming back, I think, is also really important.
Okay, and I'll go back to Dave again. How do you use feedback?
Feedback from the clients?
Yes.
We change our methods. I mean, we did a big project here in Wilkinsburg where our warehouse is, and we expected to go to people's homes to do things, but a lot of people have home insecurity, and they were a little bit embarrassed that they actually weren't in their home. They're living with an aunt or an uncle or a relative. So they were embarrassed to say that they didn't really have a house, that they were living with somebody else. So most people that we dealt with wanted to meet us at the food bank, which is where a lot of them gather every week for free food, 5 times a week, especially Wednesday, which is pastry day. That's when people come. They get extra donuts with their food. So so we set up shop there every Wednesday, and more people were willing to just step off to the side and get some training with us at the food bank, as opposed to us going to their home. And a few people, once we got to know them, mentioned that their house is really filthy. They're embarrassed. I think anybody feels that way. I don't want to have guests come over. I'm not clean. So the two things were home insecurity and the fact that their house is messy, and some people were just afraid to have strangers in their home. They're just very untrusting because we just got to know them, and they're not quite sure they want to have us in their home for an hour. Mm-hmm. So we've changed our methods. We don't automatically say we're coming to your house, because that sometimes just makes people really anxious. We give them the option. Would you like to meet us at a library or another place, or would you like us to come to your home?
Do you also use feedback in the next grant application?
Yeah, and when we talk about how we engage our clients, we always have a partner. We don't cold call anybody. Everybody's referred to us. So we write that in the grant that we're going to use the school system or the library system to identify people. We're going to give them the option to meet in their home. And that adds cost to the project too. If we're going to be driving to their home, we have to write in the mileage. We have a lot of rural people that we take care of, and it's a long way to get to 2 or 3 people in a day. So we write that. Maybe we can do it on the phone if they prefer, but most often we're going to drive to their home to be more effective. So that's how it's changed policy and procedure. We're a little bit more open to different ways to engage. And then once they have a laptop or a computer from us, we have Google Remote on there, and we can meet with them remotely. We usually show that during the first meeting. If you want, we can just connect through Google Remote. And we demonstrate how that works and how it's secure. And they don't have to install any software because we install it on every machine. That's a long answer to your question. I'm sorry. I should have.
That's okay. AZ Strut, we're doing fine on time, so.
Okay.
Oh, mute.
Yeah, Mariana,
Sorry,
I'm gonna let you answer this one.
Okay, yeah, I'm sorry. I'm on my phone, so I'm like trying to find the little tiny button over here. Yeah, so how we use feedback. Well, I would say it's changing as we're collecting more feedback, which is great. What I can say for sure is that we want the feedback, and we've used some of the feedback, obviously, as Dave said, for service improvements and program improvements. We also, as you were saying, Catherine and Dave, you also mentioned, of course, feedback is very important for showing the effectiveness and the impact of your work. And so, especially stories, of course, people can relate to personal stories of, how a device has changed their life or opened up doors that weren't open before. So yeah, there's so many ways to use feedback, and specifically some of the ways I can think that AZ Strut has used feedback recently is especially for choices. Like, I think, as Dave was saying, the more choices, the more empowering you can be when you're serving individuals and organizations, partners too. The better the long-term relationship is going to be. So giving choices, for example, on operating system, we've always been one of the few and mighty still Linux operating system organizations. However, we recognize that not everyone is as avid a fan of Linux. And so in one of our labs, our Techie Women Empowerment Lab, we give a choice at the end of their session. Would you like to have Linux? And by this time, they've had some experience using Linux. Would you like to have that as your operating system on the computer you're going to take home? Or would you like something else? Would you like Chrome? We're unfortunately not licensed right now to do Microsoft Windows, but we tell them how that can be made available to them so that they can have that choice and think about what's going to be, the most useful for them. So I definitely think that that having those choices is very important. And then also for our educational programs, getting feedback from students helps us to, of course, modify the curriculum and modify your approach. So our approach is hands-on, and we realized that some of the time was not really hands-on, and the students called us out on it. Like, you're explaining about all these different parts and you're showing us pictures. So we built some basically prop boxes so that we have, a hard drive, we have a motherboard, we have RAM, we have all those things. Before students are taking apart the desktop, they've already touched all those individual components. And so that was basically from student feedback, because, a lot of students, they'll tell you right up front, like, hey, you said it was going to be this, but we were doing that. So come on. So and those are two examples I can think of, definitely, that of course there are more that really have impacted, the feedback has impacted our service delivery.
We got
So-
that feedback early on too. Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
That's okay. I was going to ask People's Resource Center if they had any comment to make. And I'm going to get RSVP next, so think about it.
Yeah, I mean, we've been at a kind of like interesting place lately where our you know, we've pretty much offered classes in you know, Microsoft Office. That's been like the meat and potatoes, other than like intro to computers and Windows fundamentals. And we've gotten to a point where we're just kind of seeing people not signing up for stuff. So like we're at this point where we're trying to really gather that feedback, basically, again, you know, to steer our direction. Like what do you guys want us to teach you? What do you want to learn? Because, you know, is it that you don't want, you know, the Microsoft classes, you've already taken them, you want something different? Is it, you know, the weekly commitment for multiple weeks and you just want like a one and done, you know, session? What is it? Our problem has been tricky. So at People's Resource Center, we computer training and access is just one of the many things that we do. We're like most well known for our food pantries in our community, but we have all these other services as well. We give a lot of surveys to our clients, and so sometimes they don't want to do more of them. And that's kind of where our speed bump is for the time being. But you know, we do have like our current clients who are taking classes, they're really, really grateful for what we're offering them. And they're usually really receptive about giving us that feedback. And the nice thing with those clients is that they usually are willing to do surveys for us and, you know, fill out a quick Google form, you know, just tell us about how the class was, tell us if we, you know, kind of met your needs and things, what else would you like to see, you know, how was your instructor, all of that. But usually they're good about reaching out and giving that verbal feedback as well, which we also note. And so, of course, that part's a little more tricky when you're getting just miscellaneous phone calls from people asking about, hey, do you offer this class? Do you have, you know, QuickBooks? And, you know, trying to kind of tally up, well, how many people are asking about QuickBooks? Is this something worth looking into? But we're definitely at a good turning point where we're able to kind of shift and work a little bit harder at trying to meet our clients where they're at as far as what it is that they're looking for. So that's with January, I'm trying to shift gears and just kind of change things up a little bit so we can, you know, what was the saying, throw the spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks. So
Michelle?
We use a fairly simple form for intake as well as for end of class work. All of our instruction is over Zoom, so we do not have a lot of face-to-face other than what we're doing like today. But what I would ultimately would love to do in the future, which I'm hoping for me in the new year, maybe we can do some more online testimonials, maybe doing a Zoom call. We've done that before, but it's been a while, and get some more feedback that way, so that way we can really get a little bit more personal with them of what they learned, what they didn't. We find that from the feedback, not unlike what Dave was saying, that most of the time the students say their biggest number one compliment is that our instructors are patient. It's not about the number of things they learned how to do. It's just that there was kindness that was behind them. And when we get the surveys, the few that we get as at the end of class, we also take that information and help to get more grant money to be able to continue to fund the program. But I need to do a better job of making sure that we get a higher percentage of those surveys returned, which is sometimes tricky. A lot of times, you know, you're done, you get the survey and you think, nah, I don't feel like doing it. They could also potentially just not understand how to get into it, because a lot of our students are they're very new when it comes to computer world, but maybe even with a little bit of coaching, we could get them to return more of the surveys than what we're getting. We don't necessarily customize any of the material based on the feedback that we receive, just because, again, it's real basic material that we're teaching. For most of these individuals, we don't get into specific software for instruction, but we have customized it to the point of at least listening to their feedback. If there is a way to change how we approach the classes or what we do, we absolutely will listen to those students. But I think that they are just happy to have had an ear. They're happy to have had a connection with an instructor for a month or 2 months, or sometimes even longer, that's been there to answer questions for them and help them get a little bit more comfortable using whatever devices it is that they have. Does that help?
Yeah. Katie, do you have anything to share, like from the annual conference? Because I know you guys collect feedback on that.
Sorry, me?
Yeah.
I might not have been here for the annual conference. I just started.
Oh, okay.
Sorry about
All
that.
right. I wasn't sure because it's
But
like
yeah, I think Aaron's jumping on in a few minutes. So if you want to pose the question to him, you might be able to answer that better.
And Lizzie, do you have anything to add? Just seeing the photos. So if not, I'm thinking we may have answered the next question, which is what changes have you made based on feedback? An example or two. I'm pretty sure we got that from Dave already, but if you have another one you're thinking of, feel free to share.
Lizzie did say that she would like to, but she's managing several programs teaching, so that's why she's
okay. Yeah.
No, Michelle brought up something that's important. We stopped having people fill out intake forms at the beginning. We do it by verbal interview because it goes much faster and we get the data. There's a lot more questions on the intake than there is at the end of a class. So we do all intake verbally over the phone usually. And that goes really quick because we have headset on. We can ask questions like a telephone operator. And at the end of the class, we kept our survey really, really small. Basically, are you happy? What did you learn today? Could we do something better? We just let them know. But they're much more comfortable if they can just say, if you just say, I have a couple questions for you. Do you have a minute? We get through it real quick. And at the very beginning, we had forms everywhere and there's paper everywhere, and it was very inefficient.
I remember back when I used to do stuff back in work, and they would have surveys, and we knew that if we wanted to get a good answer, we just had to feed them during the half-day class, and we would get a better answer regardless. And if it was cold or hot, that's all they would talk about at the end of the point of the survey. So yeah, I think sometimes long surveys don't work too well.
I don't think anybody likes to do surveys.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah,
so
I wanted to
going to talk about the really long one, right?
Sorry.
I said AZ Strut's going to talk about this multi-page survey that you guys have.
On that, also
of. Go ahead.
Oh no! Can you hear me? Okay. Okay. Can you hear me?
Now we can.
Can anybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Perfect. I was getting all the blank looks, and I'm like, I think something's wrong. Yeah. No. What I really wanted to talk about though was. Pardon me?
I think it's because there was a delay in your
delayed?
video. We heard your audio and your video was behind.
Oh, okay. No problem. So no, what I wanted to talk about though was to piggyback on Dave's 2-question or 3-question idea. I really think that that is a very effective way, and also or approach, and also the one-to-one phone verbal. I think we Lauren, got to unfortunately experience how difficult it is to get return on emailed surveys. We get so much email, and so I think we definitely discovered that phone call saves everybody that time of dealing with email and answering by email. And usually when I get a survey by email, I'm like, oh, okay, I'll do that later. And you won't, but something in you says, it's going to take more time and thought than I have right now. This is email. So I do believe that the I think we're going back, thankfully, maybe to a more personal touch time to get feedback. And then also related to that, end of classes, what we've done recently that's worked really well is to have students and learners of all ages, it doesn't matter, but this worked very well with teens, who I'm sure teens don't want to do surveys at the end of class, but they will fill out a couple of Post-it notes. And that activity of filling out the Post-it note with a very pointed question and putting the Post-it note up on the paper kind of engages them a little bit more than the here's a survey, here's an evaluation, fill it out. Oh, okay. You know, and they either go 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, or I don't know. But we had some definitely better answers with the 2 or 3 Post-its. Here are the questions, answer them on the Post-it. Then they realize they don't have to write a lot, you know, and then just put it up on the paper.
Has anyone
Yeah.
tried
Oh,
doing
sorry,
text?
Kath.
Sorry. You know you're supposed to follow us, but has anyone tried doing text messages or WhatsApp thing with teens? Because I kind of, when Mariana was talking about phone calls, you know, I'm not very fond of phone calls, and young people are not very fond of phone calls, but they're also not doing their email anymore. And I'm just wondering if anyone's thought about trying to do text or a quick group thing, and you know, first 3 people that answer, you know, win a bag of M&Ms or something. Because I just sort of thinking on this thing going, younger people don't like some of the ways that we communicate.
Yeah,
So
there's a lot of data on people of all ages responding more to text messages than they do emails. And we use that for our lottery program, where we hand out 20 free computers every week. Texting, everybody responds.
yeah.
Email, never, but texting, they look at their phone and they can respond. So texting is very effective, but we don't use it for surveys, but we use it for communication extensively.
Yeah, I was thinking it was a lot like a Post-it note, that nobody expects it to be really long in text. So therefore the pressure's off on doing a long answer to something, and that might encourage people to then respond. You know, and obviously they miss it too. All right, Lauren, you had something else you were going to say?
No, not much. Actually, kind of to piggyback off of what Dave was saying, though. We ended up having to text some of the respondents for the survey, and they were much more responsive. Just like quick and easy. A couple of people really got back on those. And in fact, sometimes you call people to do like a phone survey or a phone reminder to do their survey. And their answering machine would be like, just text me. Don't bother calling me. Just, if you want to get in touch with me, just send me a text. And that works really well. They kind of respond on their own time. And yeah, got good feedback from the people who I texted.
Anybody else? So the next question is, how is feedback shared with staff?
Can I go before Dave this time?
Yes, you may. I was almost going to jump on Aaron, but I wanted to give him a chance to see what we were doing before we bothered him about. Yes, Mariana.
No, because I just want to say that it's pretty random here right now because we're really just starting this whole phase. And so it's a very good question. We do often try to share what's written on our surveys with the staff, like in a manager's meeting. And then sometimes actually we will text the coach and let them know, oh, look, this was the feedback, or there might be a photo of like a really interesting comment from one of the students, and send that to them. So, but we are developing this, so I am very interested to hear what other people have to say.
Dave, I guess you get to go after Mariana.
Oh, you want me to go now? Okay.
Yeah, she wanted you to come second, I think.
So the question is, how is the feedback shared with the staff?
Yes.
Well, we have a weekly group check-in, and then I have individual check-ins with people every week. And, you know, some of that feedback we get is from clients. So I don't think every client we see during the week is reported to the staff. But if there's an issue, we report. Is that what you're talking about?
Well, an issue or a trend. I mean, if people in general are saying, "Oh, I don't understand why you're wasting my time with this," you know, that might want to be prettied up a little bit because it might be someone's baby on on the staff, but this is a thing they put a lot of work into. But you know, how do you share?
There was, I can remember one incident where Will Perez, who runs our digital navigator program, is a super neatnik. He always brings Windex with him. And he found one time that he actually, instead of cleaning the machine in his car, like one last wipe down, he actually did it in front of the client. And the client was really impressed that we would take the time to clean the machine and the screen and all that and shine it up, make sure it's really nice. And he said, you know, they really responded well to that. So the next day he did it. Every client he went to see, every user he went to see, he cleaned the machine in front of them. And he said they loved it. They commented on that. You took a moment to clean the machine. You're giving me really nice equipment. So we changed our policy. Now, instead of cleaning at the car at the warehouse, do one more cleaning in front of the client and talk to them while you're busy cleaning the machine, making sure the keyboard doesn't have marks on it and everything. And so that was a policy that just came randomly, but now it's our policy for everybody. Always clean the machine in front of the client. Give it a spit shine. So that's what happened with feedback from the staff. But other than that, we always talk about difficult clients. We have clients that sometimes are really tough at the beginning, and then we kind of win them over after they get to know us, and we have a couple of visits. So we always talk about tough situations. We kind of share it like around the water cooler about what happened with a tough client and how we overcame that in general.
So Aaron, we had a question earlier that we kind of went around the room on terms of how do you use feedback or make changes based on feedback. And so I was curious as to whether there was anything from the annual conference that you could share.
Yeah, so we do evals, and we kind of have a whole team internally that that takes the lead and coordinates with our national planning team for the Net Inclusion Conference. So we do a team debrief after the conference where we kind of talk about our own observations, what went well, and then also review those evals and take that feedback pretty seriously and incorporate it in. So you should see some changes this year in a few months based on that. And I was going to mention, so to that last question, I was also going to mention, like, we don't deal with, we're not on the ground working with folks in the community like you all are. So our feedback looks a little different, right? But we have 1,000 affiliates or 1,000+ affiliates now. So we're getting feedback all the time. And one of the things that we have a weekly staff meeting where we talk through, things we've heard from our community and things we need to address or feedback we've gotten. We also have a weekly director's call where we have a chance to like maybe talk through some stickier issues before we kind of roll that out to the whole team. So we can kind of compartmentalize like where's the appropriate venue to like hash out and talk through feedback or input we've gotten. And then the other thing I was going to mention that's actually probably the most practical is that we're on Slack all the time, and that's, I think, honestly the best way that we found to share feedback within our team is if we need to be responsive quickly, we can put it into Slack and either identify someone directly or put this out and say, hey, does someone have some insight into this, and who from our team can respond and be pretty responsive that way, and get the right person either getting in touch with who we need to or figure out a next course of action. But I think there's also a lot we can learn. We're developing the evaluation protocol for our National Digital Navigator core right now. And I think that's one of the questions that we want to pose to folks like yourselves is like, how do we write into that evaluation protocol, like what are the right types of reporting and sharing back to the digital navigators for like process improvement along the way. Like it'd be really helpful to hear what you're doing, what's worked well, or suggestions that you would have about how to do that. That evaluation protocol will guide the 18 digital navigator sites that are part of the grant program, but it's also we're going to roll it out as kind of a national resource too. So for any other digital navigator program, have that evaluation tool in place. So hopefully that'll have some recommendations about like reporting and how to implement feedback that you hear from that. So would love any suggestions about best practices or what you found works. I'll stop talking now.
Who wants to answer?
Well, we use Google Chat. We don't have a Slack channel, but we use Google Chat. We have a room where we can all just do the same thing that Slack does. And that's efficient for us. We've done Slack channels too, but that's the most efficient for us.
I think
We can-
particularly the channelized component of it, where you can immediately slot something into the right. You know, we have one channel just about net inclusion. We have another channel just for digital navigator questions, another, you know, you can imagine dozens of them. So like, that's an easy way to immediately, like, while it's front of mind, get it to the right audience internally. And so that it's kind of already categorized into where we need to be thinking about how to provide feedback or get back to someone.
So I just wanted to add, Aaron, you were asking about the digital navigator feedback evaluation protocol and best practices. So I think a few of the things that have come out of this call are definitely that one-on-one conversations seem to be the most effective, and then somehow that person who's collecting that recording it rather than asking the person providing the feedback to record it, because then you're, you know, taking that barrier away. So that's one thing that I would suggest.
I think all but one person said yes. Everybody's fine with recording it, like you're doing a journalistic interview. And then
Well, I
you can
think
just
Mariana also, she also means recording it as we're not asking people to fill out it. Like you said, at the very beginning, you do all those questions verbally and the person's typing it in who's asking the question. You're not asking the client to type in or answer or fill out a long form. Correct, Mariana? That's the other part of it. Yeah, I realize recording is a double used word, because you also did talk about recording these things so we get it accurate, which is also really good. Right. And people are actually, as long as they know it's not going to be posted, like this one will be, but people are okay because, you know, you're just using it to collect data, and I'm sure you're not just you're not posting the whole thing, but to do the actual form, people are happier chatting, or like we talked about, text messages, etc., as opposed to giving them something to fill out because they don't want to, you know, it's boring, I think, to fill out forms for most people.
Yeah, and I would also say that timing is everything too. Timing with asking for feedback is so important. That's one thing that we've really struggled with, which I think is one of our next questions.
What's the best time to ask?
Well, I think it depends on what you've been providing. So with digital, I'm trying to connect this back to the digital navigator model. So, I mean, I would imagine that there's kind of two times to ask with the digital navigators. You know, there's in person when you're actually with the person maybe the first time and get some feedback, and then maybe some point later on when you're still in contact with them. But I guess in terms of timing, I'm thinking our experience at AZ Strut is we can get a lot more feedback when we're face to face or just recently connected to, for example, when we're giving to an organization. Let's say it's a week or 2 weeks later after we've provided equipment. That's probably an ideal time. A month, 2 months, maybe not so ideal.
One thing that's kind of obvious with us is we ask them if it's a good time to do the interview, to do the intake, and offer that we do it after work. A lot of folks are at work and they can't really talk or give answers. It's a little bit tougher on us because we have to stay a little bit later and make the phone call from home. But people appreciate that we say, is now a good time for, I need about 10 minutes of your time. Would you rather me just call you later after you're done working? And they really appreciate that. That came back in some feedback that we were nice enough to ask to do it on a weekend or after work. So it shows respect for their time.
So I want to get to the last two questions since Barry put a lot of effort into these. Who in your organization is responsible for gathering feedback, and how's the effort funded? Marianne, I want to go first.
Sure. My first response to that was, who? And funding? Yeah. Well, obviously, those of you who have listened so far, we had a wonderful volunteer, Lauren, who has been responsible for gathering feedback most recently. And then our camp coaches in the camps or in the labs, those instructors are responsible for that, collecting that feedback. Funding, yes, well, I wouldn't say that we definitely have it, but we are always trying to incorporate it into our grant request, that there has to be some money set aside for gathering and reporting on feedback.
Dave?
Yeah, sorry for the background noise. Yeah,
That's okay.
we only do projects that are funded, and outreach and intake and all that is part of any grant that we write. So that time is covered. So, and I'm usually the ultimate person who's responsible to make sure that data is there, but all the directors I have who are really good at collecting and recording that data either in Salesforce or HubSpot. But I'm ultimately, the question, who's ultimately responsible? The answer is me.
Yeah. Michelle, you guys do a lot of feedback collecting.
So for my department, it is definitely me that is the responsible party. And same thing, like Dave said, it's all the money is through the grants already. So the entire portion of that project, it's all funded already. It's part of the grants that they write.
A lot of times that's the hardest part of the project, is getting in touch with people and getting that intake. It takes a lot of time and multiple phone calls. It's a big part of getting everything off the ground.
Anyone else want to add anything? I think the next one is what we can talk for the rest of the time. Can you name challenges in collecting feedback? I think we've covered some, but it's kind of a summary question. But particularly if we've missed anything, I mean, because we talked about getting people time, getting people to do it. But other challenges? Anyone?
Well, I'm just in.
No, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay. I think one that we have, I'm sure that we have, are guilty of this ourselves, but we've also seen it with some other programs that we're providing support for or guidance for, is not identifying what you want to do with the feedback or the purpose for collecting it. So it's really easy to say, like, we need to ask people these things and gather this information. But if you don't actually know what questions you're, like, why you're asking the question or what you're going to do with it, we found that it either leads to kind of inconsistent results in how the information is collected, because there's not a clear vision for what it's going to contribute to, and it just ends up sitting there or not being used. So I think being proactive and thinking about, why are we collecting this and how will this change something down the road, I think is a really important piece that we've seen. Like I said, I'm sure we do it too, but that part's often missing.
Yeah, that's part of our preamble when we do an intake, that the data is not going to be posted on the internet. And when we report out, it's going to be anonymized. We just tell them, you'll have a number. We won't be sharing your information. And if it has to do with their address, it'll be aggregated to show how many people live in the city or outside the city, to let them know that we're not going to be sharing their data with anyone. We say that right up front. It's sort of part of our disclaimer at the very beginning.
That's actually something we added into our end of class surveys, because I was getting clients just not doing it. I had a client call me about a conflict that she had or like issue with her instructor. And I was like, this is really great information. I was jotting it down. I was like, please, like, as you're going through the class, keep these things in mind. And at the end, if you can do the survey, that's going to be really helpful for, anything else that you might see. And she mentioned she was concerned that I was going to share that. And I was like, well, I'm going to probably talk to this volunteer, but I won't say who I heard from. That's not going to happen. I'm not going to, say anything about that. And then I realized, well, if that's a concern that she's having in this one-on-one conversation, I would imagine it's also a concern people have when filling out the survey. So I did make sure, again, we just use Google Forms. So at the, right at the top, end of class survey, whatever, year. And then it says all responses are anonymous. And this is purely just for helping us make sure that we can do things better.
Some of the other challenges, people's user work schedule. It says challenges for collecting feedback. Again, the time of the day is important for a lot of people that are working 2 or 3 jobs, and they're on the run all the time. And a lot of people are avoiding bill collectors, or we have a lot of undocumented workers here in Pittsburgh, so they're avoiding immigration services. So those things will keep them from giving you feedback or being completely honest, or just avoiding you completely. They got their computer, they got the class, they're gone, and you never hear from them again. So getting later feedback is very difficult. When you say you want to call them in a month or 6 months, it's really hard to collect that data.
Yeah, to kind of follow up on that, I think it's also really hard to collect data on people who only use the service once. And like trying to figure out why they're not coming back again is very difficult. Because I know when we were talking at Strut about, okay, well, what can we do next with this work? The people who keep coming back, you can always ask them again at the next time they come around. What should we change? What worked? What didn't? But when they're not coming back, they just kind of vanish off into the ether. Trying to find what's going wrong in there is really, really hard. And I don't really have a solution for that.
You have their phone number, but they don't answer the call. You leave a message, they don't call you back. So it's real difficult.
Mm-hmm. And for some people, phone numbers change, frequently as they're going through different services and pay for use.
Protection from abuse. There's other things that are in legal problems cause people not to want to call you back.
Well, since this topic was feedback, we at Partners Bridging the Digital Divide would be happy to have feedback on both this session and what else you'd like to have in this type of format, because we've been talking about it for a while, that it'd be good to get some of our partners together and share information in a simple format that doesn't take too much, hopefully, time of people setting up and preparing for it, but they can learn from it. So if you have any suggestions, please send them to Barry. You guys all have his email anyway, so that's.
And if you want to put it on a Post-it, I will welcome that as feedback. I like that as an idea.
Yeah, that's a good.
I'd love to go around individually and pick them up, but
you can send them a text too.
I could. Because one of the challenges that we have is we're trying to gather information for experience papers and so on. It's like, we do the email, and if it's a mass email, people often say, oh yeah, I'll get to that when I get to it. Sometimes people respond to phone call follow-up, sometimes they don't. And so I'll be asking for all of your text numbers so that I can
and then you don't have to give them, because I don't give out my phone number to most people, although Barry does know it. But thank you all for your time, especially thank you, Dave. Thank you, Mariana, and thank you, Lauren, and everybody who talked. And I hope you guys all found it very informative, and appreciate your time and attention. And we will let you know where the recording is if you want to share this with other people, because I think I'm going to go back and listen to it and take notes, because there was some really good stuff. And thank you.
And out of respecting your time, we will give you back 2 minutes for the rest of your day. So thank you for coming, and thank you for participating.
Thank you.
Thank you.